Keanu Reeves was tired. He had just finished a long shoot in Europe, a city that felt gray and heavy on his shoulders. As he stood in the airport lounge, he sipped his black coffee and looked around at strangers moving fast with their suitcases and sleepy children. He loved watching people at airports. It made him feel connected, even when he was alone. But that day, he was not ready for what he was about to see. His mind was full of scripts and calls he needed to make, but life had other plans. The soft sound of a child's laugh cut through the noise of the boarding calls. It was a sweet sound, innocent, like a warm memory he did not know he had lost. Keanu turned his head slowly, almost afraid. He saw a woman sitting near the big glass window. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair tied back in a loose bun. But it was her face that made his heart stop. It was Clara, his ex-wife. They had not spoken in more than 15 years. They had parted ways quietly, with no hate, but with deep sadness that stayed hidden in old boxes and old songs. They were both young and foolish, and they thought life would give them time to heal together. It did in single quotes Keanu single quotes S legs felt frozen. He wanted to look away, to pretend this was not happening. But then he saw them, two small children, maybe 6 or 7 years old, a boy and a girl. They sat close to Clara, leaning against her as they looked at a book. Keanu felt the air rush out of his lungs. He could see it clearly, their eyes, their dark hair, the small dimple on the boy's cheek when he smiled. They looked like him. No, they looked exactly like him. His mind started to spin with questions. What was happening? Why didn't he know? How could she keep this from him? But then his heart reminded him that maybe she had a reason. Maybe there was more to the story than he could see from his safe corner by the coffee shop. He remembered Clara's soft voice telling him once, "If we ever have children, I want them to have your kindness." He felt his eyes burn. He wanted to move, to run to her, to hold those children, to know their names. But his feet stayed planted. Keanu remembered how their marriage fell apart. It was not because of some cruel betrayal. It was because they both carried wounds from their own childhoods, wounds they did not know how to share. They loved each other but could not heal each other. He buried himself in work. She moved away, started fresh. They promised to stay friends, but life drifted them like leaves on water. And now she was here, right in front of him, with the life they could have had, the life he never thought he deserved, a life that maybe was his all along. He watched Clara lift her head, feeling his stare. Her eyes locked with his, and he saw 1,000 stories in that one look. Pain, surprise, regret, but also something warm, a memory of love that never fully died. She gave him a small smile, the same soft smile she had when she used to curl up on their old couch and rest her head on his shoulder. The children looked up, curious. They turned their little faces toward him. The boy tilted his head, studying Keanu with eyes wide like the ocean. The girl frowned slightly, a tiny mirror of Keanu's own puzzled face. It was like seeing ghosts of his younger self, wrapped in new hope and innocence. He wanted to speak, but his throat felt tight, words trapped in the prison of his own fears. Clara stood up slowly, her hands resting on the children's shoulders. She picked up her bag and motioned them to stay close. She did not look angry. She looked calm, like she had been waiting for this day too. Maybe she was tired of running from old truths. Maybe she knew that these small souls deserved the truth, even if it changed everything. Keanu's heart raced. He stepped forward, then stopped again. What if they did not want him in their lives? What if he had already lost the chance to be a father, to be trusted, to be loved by children who were his blood? What if he failed them the way he failed Clara? He thought about all the roles he played in movies, heroes, loners, lovers, but none of those scripts could save him now. This was real. This was raw. His mind whispered a single word: courage. He had always admired courage in others, but never knew how to hold it for himself. Now he needed it more than ever. He took a slow breath. His eyes met Clara's, and for the first time in years, he saw no walls between them, only an old bridge, waiting to be crossed. The twins clung to Clara's hands, looking between their mother and the strange man who looked so much like them. Keanu stepped forward again, just a few steps. His voice came out soft, broken, but honest. "Hi, Clara," he said. Are they mine?" His words floated in the air, heavy with all the moments they had lost. Clara looked at him, her eyes filling with something like forgiveness. Or maybe it was just the beginning of it. She nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek. The children pressed closer to her, sensing something big was happening. Keanu felt his knees weaken. His eyes stung with tears that blurred the busy airport around him. He wanted to kneel down and open his arms. He wanted them to run to him, to know him, to love him. But he knew it would take time. He knew trust could not be forced. He had been a ghost in their story for too long. Now he had to learn how to be real. As the boarding call for his flight echoed through the speakers, Keanu knew he was not going anywhere. This was the place he needed to be, right there, in front of the glass window, where old wounds and new hope could finally meet. The past could not be changed, but maybe, just maybe, the future could be written with love. One brave word at a time. Keanu stood there for what felt like forever. People passed him by, dragging suitcases and yawning at the morning flights. But he did not see any of them. All he saw was Clara and the twins, just small mirrors of himself and a woman he once thought he would love forever. The boy peeked out from behind Clara's arm, his eyes big and curious. The girl stayed close too, her tiny hand gripping her mother's sweater. They looked so innocent, so fragile, and Keanu felt an ache in his chest he could not describe. Clara's lips trembled as she whispered his name. It felt strange to hear it from her mouth again after all these years. She looked older than when he last saw her, but somehow softer too. There were lines near her eyes, a sign that she had smiled often, maybe for them. Her hair was streaked with silver strands that glowed in the morning sun, pouring through the tall glass. She looked like a story he had forgotten, but never really let go of. The children kept looking between Keanu and Clara, waiting for an answer to a question they didn't know how to ask. Keanu dropped to his knees slowly, afraid to scare them, wanting to seem smaller, gentle. He wished he had a gift, a toy, anything to make them smile, but he only had his trembling hands. He looked into their eyes and saw pieces of himself in the way they blinked shyly and leaned closer to their mother. "Hi," Keanu said softly, his voice cracking. "I'm Keanu. What are your names?" The boy spoke first, his voice bright and clear, with the bravery that comes only from children who feel safe beside their mother. "I'm Lucas," he said proudly. He nudged his sister. "And she's Lily." Lily hid behind Clara's leg, peeking out just enough to see Keanu's soft smile. Keanu swallowed hard. Lucas and Lily, two names that felt like warm lights inside his chest. He wanted to reach out, but he knew he had to be patient. Clara knelt down too, wrapping an arm around each child. "They've heard about you," she said, her voice quiet, like she was afraid the truth might break if she spoke too loud. I never planned to hide you from them forever. I didn't know how to tell you." "How to tell them?" Keanu nodded. He wanted to be angry, to demand answers, but he could not. All he could see was the weight Clara must have carried, alone for so long. He remembered her strength, her stubborn pride, and her endless love. He could not blame her, not when he had disappeared into his own work, into far-off sets and hotel rooms, trying to drown the pain of losing her. Do they know I'm their dad?" he asked, his voice shaking. Clara looked at him, her eyes wet but steady. She nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "I told them stories. I told them you were kind, that you loved adventures, that you were far away, but you always wanted to come home." Lily took a small step forward, her tiny shoes tapping on the airport floor. She looked at Keanu with wide eyes, her small lips parted as if she was trying to find the right words. "Are you really our dad?" she asked. Her voice was so soft, so full of wonder, that Keanu felt his heart break open. He nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. "Yes, Lily, I'm your dad. I'm so sorry I wasn't here before." His voice cracked as he spoke. "But I want to be here now if you'll let me." Lucas looked at Lily, then at Clara, then back at Keanu. He frowned a little, the way Keanu used to frown when he was confused. "Are you gonna come with us?" Lucas asked. His question was so innocent, yet so heavy. Keanu's mind raced. He didn't even know where they were going, where they lived now, what their life looked like. But he knew one thing for sure. He was not going to let them walk away without trying. "If it's okay with your mom," Keanu said, glancing at Clara. She nodded, her eyes filled with a strange mix of fear and hope. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Come with us, please." They sat together on the cold bench by the big window, the world outside still moving fast, but their small corner felt frozen in a pocket of time. Clara told him how she had moved to another city after they split, how she found work and built a small life. She talked about the twins, how Lucas loved to draw spaceships and Lily liked to sing to her dolls at night. Every word felt like a piece of his own missing puzzle being gently put back where it belonged. As Clara spoke, Keanu noticed how the twins kept inching closer to him. Lucas finally leaned against his side, his small shoulder pressing into Keanu's arm. It was like a spark, a sign that maybe there was still room for him in this tiny family. Lily rested her head on Clara's lap but kept her eyes locked on Keanu, studying him, memorizing every line of his face. After a while, Lucas reached into his backpack and pulled out a crumpled drawing. He handed it to Keanu, who unfolded it with shaking hands. It was a picture of a man with dark hair, standing beside the kids, all holding hands under a big yellow sun. At the bottom, in a child's wobbly letters, it said me, Lily, and Daddy. Keanu felt his chest tighten so much he could hardly breathe. He hugged Lucas close, careful not to scare him, his tears falling onto the paper. "Thank you, buddy," he whispered, his voice full of emotion he could not hide anymore. "This is the best thing anyone has ever given me." Lucas beamed with pride, his small hand squeezing Keanu's arm. The airport announcements kept calling flights, but for Keanu, there was nowhere else to go. He would follow them wherever they were headed. Clara squeezed his hand, her eyes saying what words could not, that maybe it was not too late for them to rewrite the ending. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something brave and beautiful. Keanu did not sleep that night. They had found a small hotel close to the airport because Clara's connecting flight was the next morning. It was a tiny room with 2 beds pushed together and a small couch by the window. Lucas and Lily fell asleep quickly, curled up together like 2 kittens, their little heads touching. Keanu sat in the chair by the window, staring at them, watching their small chests rise and fall in perfect rhythm. Every breath they took felt like a promise that he would never let them feel alone again. Clara lay on the bed, her eyes open, watching him. The city lights spilled through the thin curtains, painting her face in silver and shadows. They had talked for hours, not just about the twins, but about everything they had hidden in their hearts. Keanu spoke of all the nights he spent wondering if she was happy, if she had found someone who could give her what he could not. Clara told him how she stood outside movie theaters when his films came out, sometimes alone, sometimes with the twins, whispering, "That's your daddy up there." Keanu's heart ached for all the birthdays he missed, the first steps he never saw, the scraped knees he didn't kiss better. But Clara's voice, soft and calm, told him not to drown in that guilt. "You're here now," she said, reaching across the blanket to touch his hand. "They need you now." He turned his head and looked at her. She was so close, yet the years apart felt like miles. Her eyes were tired but still warm. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice rough but honest. Clara took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. "I wanted to. I wrote letters. I never sent them. I thought maybe you had moved on. You seemed so far away, so busy with your life. I didn't want to break your heart with something you might not have been ready for." He almost laughed, but the sound caught in his throat. "My heart was already broken," he said softly. Clara squeezed his hand. "Mine too," she whispered. They fell into silence then. It was not awkward. It was heavy, but safe, like sitting in a warm room while a storm raged outside. The twins shifted in their sleep, Lily mumbling something about her doll. Keanu felt a tiny smile tug at his lips. He wondered what their voices sounded like in the morning. He wondered what they liked to eat for breakfast, what bedtime stories they liked to hear. He wanted to know everything, every tiny detail of the life. He had missed. He stood and moved closer to the bed where the twins slept. Clara watched him as he knelt down beside them. He gently brushed a lock of hair away from Lucas's forehead. The boy stirred, but did not wake up. Lily's small hand rested on her brother's arm, as if she was guarding him even in dreams. Keanu felt something shift inside him, a quiet strength, a promise that no matter what, he would never walk away again. In the morning, the twins woke up before the sun. Lily sat up first, rubbing her eyes, blinking at Keanu sitting in the same chair, still awake. She crawled out of bed and walked over to him, her small feet patting on the cold floor. She climbed into his lap without a word, curling against his chest. Keanu froze for a second, then wrapped his arms around her, feeling her warmth. Her heartbeat pressed to his own. Lucas joined a moment later, squeezing in beside them, his head resting on Keanu's shoulder. Clara watched from the bed, her heart aching and healing at the same time. The small room felt like home for the first time in years. They checked out of the hotel after breakfast. Clara's flight was supposed to take them to her parents' house a few cities away. She explained how she stayed close to her mother and father so the twins could have grandparents in their lives. Keanu listened, nodding, trying to imagine their house, their yard, their neighborhood. "Come with us," Clara said suddenly, her voice low but steady. "Stay for a while, get to know them, get to know us again." Keanu did not hesitate. "Yes," he said. "Yes, please." At the airport gate, Lily held tightly to his hand, her tiny fingers wrapped around two of his. Lucas carried his backpack and stayed close to Clara's side. But every few steps he turned to check if Keanu was still there. They boarded the plane together, sitting in a row, Keanu by the window, the twins in the middle, Clara at the aisle. It felt awkward at first, but then Lucas started to point out clouds, asking Keanu questions about what it was like to fly so much. Lily giggled when Keanu told her silly stories about falling asleep on long flights and waking up with drool on his shirt. Clara watched him, a small smile playing on her lips. This was what she always wanted for them, to see their father not just as a picture on a magazine, but as a real man who could laugh and make them feel safe. She reached over and squeezed his knee under the tray table. He turned to her, his eyes soft. There were no big promises yet, no dramatic declarations, just small touches, small steps, the beginning of a road they would all have to build together. When the plane landed, the twins tugged at his hands, excited to show him everything. "You have to see my treehouse," Lucas shouted, his voice echoing down the jet bridge. "And my dollhouse," Lily added quickly, not wanting to be left out. Keanu laughed, the sound deep and real, like he hadn't laughed in years. As they stepped into the bright sun outside the airport, Keanu felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It was fragile, but it was there, like a seed waiting for light. He squeezed Clara's hand, and she squeezed back. They were no longer just strangers passing in an airport. They were something new, something broken but worth fixing, something old but ready to grow again. The car ride from the airport to Clara's parents' house was quiet at first. The twins sat in the back seat, leaning against each other, their eyes wide with the thrill of having their father beside them. Keanu sat in the front, his fingers drumming nervously on his knee. Clara drove, stealing small glances at him every time they stopped at a red light. It felt like they were teenagers again, sneaking out for late-night drives, talking about dreams they were too young to understand. Back then, they believed they could fix each other. Now, older and bruised by life, they both knew it was not about fixing. It was about holding space for the broken pieces and loving each other anyway. When they turned onto a small road lined with old oak trees, Lucas leaned forward between the seats. "Dad, do you like trees?" he asked, his voice curious, innocent. Keanu smiled, the word dad like a soft melody he was still getting used to. "I do," he said. "When I was your age, I used to climb trees all the time." Lucas beamed with pride. "I can climb the biggest one in Grandma's yard. I'll show you." Lily tugged at her brother's shirt. "And you can push me on the swing," she added, her tiny voice bright and sure. Keanu laughed softly, the sound warming the small car. "I'd love that," he said, turning to glance at Clara. She gave him a soft smile, one that said thank You without any words. When they pulled into the driveway, Clara's parents came out to greet them. Her mother, a small woman with kind eyes, froze when she saw Keanu step out of the car. She had always liked him, always believed he had a good heart, even when their marriage fell apart. She walked up to him slowly, her eyes filling with tears. Keanu felt like a boy again as she wrapped her arms around him. "Welcome home," she whispered. Inside the house, the smell of fresh bread and warm soup filled the air. The twins ran ahead, pulling Keanu along to show him their rooms. Lucas dragged him to the small treehouse at the back of the yard, his little boots crunching on the gravel path. "I built this with Grandpa," Lucas shouted proudly. Keanu climbed up the small ladder behind him, careful not to break the old wood. He ducked inside the tiny space, looking at the drawings taped to the walls, rockets, stick figures, and a big sun with smiling faces. In the corner, he saw another picture. It was of a man holding two kids' hands, the same three faces he saw on Lucas's paper at the airport. Lucas watched him with bright eyes. "Do you like it?" he asked. Keanu nodded, his throat tight. "I love it, buddy, it's amazing." Lucas beamed, his chest puffed out with pride. For a moment, Keanu felt the sting of all the times he wasn't there to help build forts and treehouses. But Lucas didn't seem to care. He just seemed happy his dad was there now. Later, Clara found Keanu sitting on the old wooden bench near the swing set. Lily was giggling as he pushed her gently, her small feet kicking at the air. Clara sat beside him, watching their daughter laugh with a joy that felt new and old at the same time. "They already love you," Clara said softly, her voice carrying the truth like a gift. Keanu looked at her, his eyes damp. "I hope so," he whispered. "I want to earn it every day." Clara placed her hand on his. It was a simple touch, but it felt like an anchor in the middle of the sea of doubts that still stirred in his mind. "We'll figure it out," she said. "It won't be perfect, it'll be messy and hard, but we'll figure it out." That night, they all sat around the dinner table together, the twins, Clara's parents, Clara, and Keanu. It was strange for him at first, passing the bread basket, helping Lucas with his peas, listening to Lily talk about her school friends. But each small moment stitched itself into his heart like a patch on an old coat. He could feel the warmth growing. After dinner, Clara's mother pulled out an old photo album. The twins sat on the floor, leaning against Keanu's legs as they flipped through pictures of Clara as a child. There were photos of Clara and Keanu too, old, grainy shots of them at school dances, at the beach, in their first apartment. The twins pointed at the photos, giggling at how young and silly their parents looked. "Why did you stop being together?" Lily asked suddenly, her voice soft but clear. The room fell silent. Clara looked at Keanu, her eyes asking for his lead. He took a deep breath, brushing Lily's hair from her forehead. "Sometimes," he said slowly, "people love each other but don't know how to love themselves yet. So they hurt each other without meaning to." He looked at Clara, who nodded. "But the love doesn't always go away," she added. "Sometimes it changes, and sometimes it finds its way back." Lucas tilted his head, trying to understand. Then he shrugged and crawled into Keanu's lap. Lily did the same, pressing her face into his chest. In that small, warm room, surrounded by old memories and new hope, Keanu felt a tiny piece of his heart heal. That he knew it wouldn't be easy. They had so much to rebuild. But for the first time in years, he felt ready to try. He held his children close and looked at Clara, who smiled at him through misty eyes. They were not the same people they used to be, but maybe that was the point. Maybe they were exactly who they needed to become, for themselves and for the little lives who now held their hands so tightly. The days turned into weeks, and slowly, the fear in Keanu's chest began to loosen. It did not happen overnight. It happened in small, ordinary moments that felt like small miracles. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of little feet running down the hallway. Lucas would burst through the door first, his voice full of excitement about the dreams he had. Lily would follow, softer, climbing onto the bed and curling under Keanu's arm, her warm breath on his neck. Keanu learned that children did not care about the years he missed. They cared about now. They cared about the way he tied their shoelaces, The way he held Lily's hand while crossing the street. The way he sat on the floor with Lucas for hours building spaceships out of cardboard. Every small thing felt like a chance to prove he was not going to disappear again. One evening, Clara found Keanu and Lucas in the backyard, covered in paint. They had tried to build a cardboard rocket and ended up turning it into a giant mess of colors. Lucas was giggling so hard his sides hurt. Keanu's hair was streaked with blue, his shirt ruined. But he did not care when he looked up and saw Clara laughing. He felt something he thought he would never feel again. A piece of his old life that was still alive, waiting to grow roots again. Clara had her own worries too. She wondered if the twins would get confused. Would they think their dad was here to stay forever, only to watch him walk away again? She talked to Keanu at night, when the house was quiet and the kids were asleep. They sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, their voices soft in the cool night air. "They love you so much already," Clara said, her eyes searching his. "Don't break them, Keanu. If you have to leave again, please don't promise what you can't keep." Her voice cracked on the last word. Keanu reached for her hand, his fingers warm around hers. "I'm not leaving," he said. "I'm done running. I know I messed up before. I know I can't fix everything at once. But I'm staying. I want to stay." He looked at her, his eyes shining with tears he did not try to hide. "I love them, Clara. And I love you." I never stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. They did not say more that night. They just sat there, holding each other's hands, listening to the wind rustle through the old oak trees. One weekend, Clara took them to the small lake near her parents' house. It was where they used to go when they were young and broke, dreaming of the future. The twins squealed with joy as they chased each other along the shore. Lily found smooth stones to toss into the water, her laughter echoing off the trees. Lucas climbed onto Keanu's shoulders, his tiny hands gripping his father's hair. "Higher, Daddy. Higher," he shouted, his voice full of delight. Keanu felt a strange mix of joy and pain. He wished he could bottle that moment, the blue sky, the smell of the water, Clara's soft smile as she watched him play with their children. He wished he could go back and tell his younger self not to be so afraid, not to push her away. But maybe, he thought, this was how it was always meant to be, broken first, so they could rebuild stronger. When the sun dipped low, they sat on an old blanket, eating sandwiches and watching the twins chase fireflies. Clara leaned against Keanu's shoulder, her fingers tracing circles on his knee. "They ask about you all the time," she whispered, "even before they met you. They asked me why they didn't have a dad like other kids. I always told them you were a good man who loved them from far away." Keanu's eyes stung. "I wish I could go back and change it all," he said. Clara shook her head. "No, don't. You're here now. That's what matters." The ride home that night was quiet. Lucas fell asleep in the back seat, his head resting on Lily's lap. Clara drove with one hand on the wheel and the other in Keanu's. They did not talk much. They did not have to. They were building something new, word by word, touch by touch. In the days that followed, Keanu started to notice small things. Lily would slip her tiny hand into his when they watched cartoons together. Lucas would ask him to stay by his bed until he fell asleep, his small fingers curling around Keanu's thumb. Even Clara's parents started to treat him like family again. Her father inviting him to fix the old shed, her mother baking his favorite bread without asking. But life was not perfect. There were nights when old fears crept back in, when Clara would catch Keanu staring out the window, lost in thoughts that weighed heavy on his heart. She knew he worried he would mess up again. She knew he worried about the cameras, the tabloids, the life he left behind that could knock on their door at any moment. One night, as rain tapped against the windows, Keanu sat on the edge of the bed, his elbows on his knees, his head in his hands. Clara sat beside him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. "You don't have to be perfect," she whispered. "They don't need perfect. They just need you here with them." He turned to her, his eyes tired but hopeful. "Do you really think we can do this?" he asked. She smiled, her forehead resting against his. "We already are." Outside, the world kept spinning. Storms came and went. The past still hurt sometimes, But inside that small house, in the warm rooms filled with laughter and bedtime stories, Keanu was learning something he had always struggled to believe, that maybe he was enough, just as he was, and maybe, just maybe, he could be the father they deserved and the man Clara could trust. Again, the morning light came through the small window, painting golden shapes on the wooden floor. Keanu lay awake, listening to the soft breathing of Clara beside him and the distant sound of the twins playing in the living room. It was a quiet sound, like hope whispering that maybe everything really could be different now. He closed his eyes, letting the warmth of it sink into the parts of him that had been cold for too long. Clara stirred, her hand brushing his arm. She looked at him sleepily, her hair messy, her eyes kind. "You're up early," she murmured. Keanu smiled, the kind of soft smile that came from a place that no longer needed to hide. "I like listening to them," he said. "Their laughter makes me feel new." Clara's lips curved. "You are new," she said. "We all are." Later, they all gathered in the kitchen. Clara's mother made pancakes while Lucas and Lily sat at the table, giggling about whose pancake was bigger. Keanu stood by the counter, helping pour syrup and cut the edges for Lily, because she hated when her food touched funny. Lucas talked about his school project, a big rocket made from old bottles. He wanted his dad to help him make it fly. Keanu promised he would. He meant it. Every word. After breakfast, they all went outside. The sun was soft, the grass still wet with dew. Keanu pushed Lily on the swing, her laughter ringing like a bell through the yard. Lucas climbed the treehouse again, shouting for his dad to watch as he balanced on the small wooden platform. Clara sat on the old bench, her eyes following every small moment, her heart piecing together a new kind of memory. When the twins went inside for lunch, Clara and Keanu stayed in the yard, sitting under the shade of the big tree. She leaned against his shoulder, her fingers playing with the sleeve of his shirt. "Do you think you'll stay here?" she asked. Her voice was careful but hopeful. Keanu looked at the house, the flowers by the porch, the bikes leaning against the wall, the small swing that squeaked when Lily flew too high. He thought about all the places he had been, all the cities and movie sets that never felt like home. And then he looked at Clara, at the twins' drawings taped to the windows, at the small family waiting inside. "If you'll have me," he said, his voice steady. Clara lifted her head to look at him, her eyes glistening. "I never stopped wanting you here," she whispered. They sat in the quiet, the breeze moving through the leaves above them. Keanu knew there would be challenges, old wounds that might reopen, fears that might creep in when the world outside tried to pull him back to the noise and the lights. But he also knew he was stronger now, not because he was perfect, but because he was willing to stay even when it was hard. That evening, they packed a small picnic and drove out to the lake again. They sat on the same blanket, watching the sunset behind the trees. Lucas and Lily chased each other near the water's edge, their laughter rolling across the ripples. Keanu wrapped his arm around Clara, pulling her close. "Remember when we used to come here?" he asked. Clara nodded, her head resting on his chest. "We dreamed about everything back then," she said, "and now, maybe we're finally living it." When the stars came out, Keanu lay on the blanket, Lily curled against his side, Lucas resting his head on his chest. Clara lay beside him, her fingers tracing tiny circles on his hand. The night was still, the world far away. "Dad?" Lucas whispered. Keanu turned his head, his heart fluttering every time he heard that word. "Yeah, buddy?" Lucas yawned, his eyes blinking slowly. "Are you gonna be here when I wake up tomorrow?" His voice was so small, so careful, like he was afraid the answer might be no. Keanu pressed a kiss to his son's hair. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not ever again." Lily stirred, her sleepy voice drifting up. "Promise?" Keanu smiled into her hair, his arms tightening around both of them. "Promise," he whispered. The stars above them seemed to shine a little brighter that night. The darkness that once felt so big did not feel so scary anymore. It was filled with laughter, quiet promises, and the soft sound of two small hearts beating against his own. And for the first time in so many years, Keanu did not feel like a man running from his past. He felt like a father, like a partner, like A man who had been given one more chance to hold on to the only thing that ever really mattered, family. And this time, he would not let go.